Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? All right. Thank you for joining us. This might be the last session that you guys attended Build 2016. Did everyone have a good time at Build, the keynotes? Did everyone get to do the Destination Mars? Yeah? I still haven't seen the HoloLens, so maybe you guys have seen more than I have. But anyway, those of you who have, what do you think? Was it good? Really good? Okay, I'm excited now. I will definitely go and try this out when I go back. All right, so my name is Ali. Today we're going to be talking about building cross-platform experience for Microsoft Band. How many of you have a Microsoft Band? A lot of you. Those of you who don't, we'll probably talk about what the band is, what does it do, briefly talk about the feature set, and then I'll go into how you can use our developer tools and build cool experiences for Microsoft Band. And they can be cross-platform. All right? So let me start off. Last year when I came to Build, we had launched Microsoft Band 1 about 6 months before that. It was a great device. It really showcased the power of sensors and how sensors can really bring data about people who are wearing those sensors and the insights they can get from all of that data collected from those sensors. So that was Microsoft Band 1. We released it in October 2014. It was a great device, very well received. People were very happy with it. Over the course of the next 1 year, we went in and we improved all of the software for Microsoft Band 1. We added more functionality. We gave you a golfing experience. We gave people biking experience to complement the already existing experiences of runs and workouts and guided workouts and SMS and calls and calendars and emails and all the cool things that Microsoft Band 1 could do. Fast forward 1 year, we had done all of these software updates. It was time for a hardware update. So introducing the new Microsoft Band 2, which came out in October of 2015, it was a whole new refresh of the hardware over the Microsoft Band 1. So if you look at the Microsoft Band 2, you will realize that it is everything that you wanted from Microsoft Band 1. So Microsoft Band 1, we made certain decisions about the design points. We thought we could actually conform the band to the wrist shape of a human being. What we realized was when you move your wrist, the wrist actually changes shape. So fitting a band to the wrist is more important than fitting a wrist into a band. So that was one of those things. Then we realized they wanted to use the band, and they wanted to use it all the time. We had a lot of super enthusiastic users. They did not want to take the bands off. So that when you have the band on day in, day out for months and months, we realized that this band needed to be more sturdy. It needed to be able to take more wear and tear. So we addressed a lot of those issues as well. Let me quickly talk about some of the things that Microsoft Band 2 has improved. So like I talked about, fitting the band to the wrist and not the wrist to the band, we realized that one of the fundamental things we needed to do was to make the display curved. On Microsoft Band 1, the display was flat. It would just sit on your wrist, and whenever you move your wrist, it would feel. You could feel the band on your wrist. For Microsoft Band 2, we've actually added the curved display. And now it really sits nicely on your wrist. We also removed the batteries from the side of the band to make the band more flexible. So again, when you move your wrist, the band actually flexes and moves with you. Another thing that we realized was when people wear, and a lot of people wear it with the glass screen on the inside, the glass can tend to scratch. So with Microsoft Band 2, we went ahead and we put in Corning Glass, Gorilla Glass 3, which is the best-in-class and most scratch-resistant glass that you would find in a wearable of this form factor and this kind of technology. Another thing that we did was when people put something on their wrist, they really want that thing to look beautiful and attract attention. So it needs to have a premium look and a premium feel. So with Microsoft Band 2, what we decided to do was we changed all of the casings to be stainless steel, and we brought the metal finishes to the strap as well as the casing for the glass. One of the things that we kept was the sliding clasp. With Microsoft Band 1, everybody loved the sliding clasp. In Microsoft Band 2, we maintained that clasp. So that's the visual refresh of Microsoft Band 2. This comes with all the software goodness that you had with Microsoft Band 1 all throughout the year. Just a quick overview of Microsoft Band 2's technology. Just like Microsoft Band 1, Microsoft Band 2 is also packed with sensors. We went and added in another sensor, which is the barometer sensor with Microsoft Band 2. But in addition, for those of you who haven't seen a Microsoft Band, this thing comes with 11 sensors. It can track heart rate. It has accelerometer, gyroscope, UV, barometer, galvanic skin response, and I'm sure I'm missing ambient light sensor, microphone, a whole bunch of sensors packed into a small form factor in a premium design, in a very flexible, all-day wearable form factor now. Just like with Microsoft Band 1, the Microsoft Band 2 comes with the Microsoft Health apps. The same apps that you're used to using with Microsoft Band 1, Microsoft Band 2 works with all of those apps. Those apps are cross-platform. They provide you functionality from Microsoft Health Service, which takes all the rich data that is collected from the Microsoft Band Microsoft Band sensors, takes it to the cloud, runs analytics on it, and gives you insights about your runs, your workouts, your guided workouts, your sleeps, and how you're doing in your daily everyday life in terms of number of steps you take, number of calories you burn, what your resting heart rate was. A lot of insights that you want, it comes to you, and it's all across platform. So it doesn't matter what phone you use, whether you're using an iPhone, whether you're using an Android phone, whether you're using a Windows phone, the devices work with any phone and any form factor. So that was about the Microsoft Band on the consumer side. That was a marketing blurb about what the band is, what the band does, how beautiful it is, and it's a great device. Everyone should get it. If you don't get it, if you don't have it, Microsoft Store in San Francisco has it, so go buy it. So that's done. That's the marketing spiel. Now the marketing guys are happy. Let's talk about the developer tools for Microsoft Band. So last year at Build, I had a talk on the day one, session one. At that time, we did not have any developer tools for Microsoft Band. In that talk, I promised, over the course of 1 hour, I promised that we will have a few things that will allow you to develop with Microsoft Band. So let me quickly go over what we've done in the last 1 year in terms of the developer tools that are available for Microsoft Band. So back in spring 2015, in April of 2015, we promised that we will have a Band SDK. We launched the Band SDK on day 2 of Build. I couldn't talk about it on day 1 because it was releasing on day 2. But on day 2, we launched the Band SDK. Since then, what is this SDK? This is a cross-platform SDK which comes with Xamarin Binding. So it is the perfect tool for you to develop against Microsoft Band without having to worry about which platform you're writing your apps for. So with the Xamarin Bindings, you can go cross-platform and develop for any kind of app platform that you like. We've done 6 updates to the SDK since we released the SDK. We launched with 9 sensor subscriptions. Now we are up to 14 sensor subscriptions. Each one of these sensor subscriptions give you rich data that comes from the Microsoft Band, and you can make decisions about your users and the biometric data that they give you using these sensor subscriptions. Recently, we also added full background execution on all platforms. Originally, when we launched the SDK, you could only have background execution on Android phones. We followed it up with iOS and with Windows 10 and UWPs. Using the app services, we've recently enable background execution of your applications on Windows Phone. So essentially what this means is you can now create applications that run on the Microsoft Band. They feel native to the Microsoft Band. When the user will never have to take their phone out of the pocket, they don't even have to run your application. Over the course of Build, we actually had mini theater sessions that talked in detail about the background execution on Windows Phone with UWP and app services. Hopefully, if you had a chance to view those sessions, if you haven't, they're available online. You should be able to go and check them out. We've had a ton of interest in the Microsoft Band SDK, tens and hundreds of thousands of downloads. Hundreds of apps have been published. We've had hundreds of thousands of views to our SDK site. People are really, really coming in and downloading the SDK and playing around with it. I encourage you to go in and do that. And we'll talk a little bit more about the SDK in the talk today. But what was not expected, and we've seen this tremendous interest now, is from the research communities. We launched this variable, which is a consumer variable. All of a sudden, developers came in and they asked for tools to develop for this thing. We provided them with the developer tools. We thought that the application developers will start using them. But what we did not expect was medical researchers and academia, they started showing a lot of interest in this device because of the data that we collect. And the developer tools enable that data to be accessed and then allows people to make decisions on that data. So we've seen a tremendous interest from the research community in addition to the developer community for Microsoft Band. So, and most recently, we've also started seeing interest from enterprises. So now big enterprises coming to us and saying that they want to take Microsoft Band and they want to develop their solution and enhance and extend their solutions with Microsoft Band to improve workplace efficiency. They can do lone worker safety scenarios. There are so many different scenarios that enterprises are now coming to us, and they want to integrate with Microsoft Band. So a lot of interest. We've delivered on that promise since last year. This has all happened in the last 10 or 11 months. Fast forward to summer of 2015, At Build last year, if anyone watched or if anyone was here and watched the session that I did, we promised that we will have Microsoft Health APIs. So Microsoft Band's data goes to the Microsoft Health Cloud, and there you can have access to historical data for your users over months and weeks, and you can get trends of their activities and their habits over a longer period of time. With the SDK, you get real-time data. But with the Health APIs, we promise that we'll give you access to historical data. So in summer of 2015, we actually announced the OAuth-based Microsoft account-protected APIs that allow you to get historical data from Microsoft Health into your applications. These are RESTful APIs with JSON format, so they're very open. They follow all the standards, very easy to use. They give you historical fitness data, and they also give you daily summaries and give you activity details. So if you've actually integrated with the Microsoft Health APIs, you can now get details about your users' steps, their calories, in addition to their workouts, the details of their sleep. So you can get a lot of rich data, and now you can take that data into your applications and services and now enrich and enhance the experience of your app with the data coming from Microsoft Health. Further forward, again, at Build last year, we promised that we will allow you to get web content from web data sources, well-formed web data sources, onto the Microsoft Band without actually having to write a single line of code. We call that concept Microsoft Band Web Tiles. We announced in April that we'll have them. I think in August of 2015, we launched Microsoft Web Tiles. What are the Web Tiles? Web Tiles are XML and JSON-based data sources, and you provide a manifest that takes that XML and JSON-based data source and takes that data onto the Microsoft Band. So you don't have to write any apps. You don't have to deploy any apps. You don't have to manage any apps. It's your data somewhere on the cloud, and it shows up on the internet, on the Microsoft Band for your users without any application deployment or any application management. We added RSS and Atom support. So if you have a data source that is in the form of an RSS feed or an Atom feed, you can directly access that and get that data onto the Microsoft Band. In addition, we allowed for authenticated content, so it doesn't have to be static content. It can be content that is authenticated, so for every user, it can be different. So we have a support for HTTPS-based basic authentication. You can protect your data sources and customize those data sources for the users that are trying to access those data sources. We added support for notifications. So you users, when the data changes and a notification needs to be triggered for the user, you can now create notifications. And last but not the least, we wanted to make this dead simple for someone to write a web tile. In August of 2015, we launched what we call the online authoring tool, which is a very simple 5-step authoring tool that lets you create a web tile in less than 5 minutes. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. In addition, we have one-click install. So once you've created your web tile, you can share it with anyone through email, SMS, social media. You can host it somewhere and share the URL. Your users can now go in and click, and with one click, the web tile will be installed on their band. So all you have to do is spend 5 minutes in the authoring tool, create a web tile, send it to someone, they click on it, it shows up on the Microsoft Band, that's it. And from that point onward, that data will remain up to date, and the users will get value with such a little amount of work. Fast forward, last on the web tile stuff, we recently launched a web tile gallery. So if you create web tiles, people were sharing with SMS and email and other media, but they wanted it to be hosted so people could go to one place and get web tile content. So we announced the web tile gallery, and we've seen so many web tiles already show up in the gallery. There's hundreds of web tiles in the galleries. You should go and check it out. Earlier this year, one of the things that developers complained about or gave us feedback was it needs to be easier if they're using the Microsoft Band SDK for them to be able to create layouts on the Microsoft Band. So when you're using the SDK, you can use the Microsoft Band's beautiful touch display and create your own tiles and your own pages onto the Microsoft Band. That process required you to create the layouts in code. So you would have to go in your code. You have to create a panel. Inside of the panel, you have to put a button and another button. You have to style it, format it very, very well in code. Then you have to build your app, deploy the tile, look at that tile, and then realize, oh, I need to change something. You have to go back and then do it all over again. Now with the Microsoft Visual Studio Designer, you can actually design layouts for Microsoft Band in Visual Studio. So for all those C# developers or all the Xamarin developers, this is a great tool to use. It allows you to create layout, and it generates code. Once you've created a layout, you can then just use the generated code in your app, and then you don't have to create a layout in code at all. You can easily style and easily format your content. So all of these things, when you look at from the left to right, this is all the stuff that we've done for our developers in the last 11 or 12 months. We are very excited to continue and add more and more features. But this was just me trying to uh, hold myself true to the promise that we did last year when I came on stage at Build and announced that we will have developer tools. So now let's quickly see what are the different ways in which we can have cross-platform development from Microsoft Band. So there are two main ways in which you can get data from, you can write data that will show up on Microsoft Band without you having to actually write for each individual platform. The first thing I talked about was the web tiles. So Microsoft Band web tiles, as I talked about briefly before, they use the Microsoft Band Health app to bring web content onto the Microsoft Band. So all you have to do is write once. It will run everywhere. You have no app deployment, no app management required. It's an easy-to-use platform with JSON support. So you can create your tile for Microsoft Band once, goes everywhere. You can be done with it. It'll always stay up to date. I talked about the online authoring tool. It's a 5-step authoring tool, allows for complete authoring of tiles. It supports multiple data sources, so you don't have to have one data source. You can have many data sources. You can choose from a bunch of layouts. You don't have to have one layout. You can have 7 or 8 pages, all using different layouts. We added support for notification, and I talked about the HTTPS basic authentication for data sources. All of that is available. And last, I talked about the web gallery, direct submissions from the authoring tool. You write your tile in the authoring tool. Last step, you can submit it from there. You're done. The easy discoverability that comes with web tiles, we've seen that people who've submitted the tiles to the gallery have seen a lot more downloads than people who actually have been responsible for distributing those tiles themselves. So let me just go ahead and quickly show you how to create a JSON-based web tile with multiple pages using the Microsoft Band web tile authoring tool. So the authoring tool, in order to get to the authoring tool, you have to go to a developer portal. You get to the same place for Microsoft Band SDK or for the Microsoft Health APIs as well, but the same place allows you to go into web tiles. So once you go to developer.microsoftband.com, all you have to do is click on the section that is web tiles, and the first thing you want to do is make it very easy for you to get started. So here you can have documentation, you have sample codes, you can see how the manifest looks, what all it does, but you don't even need to do that. You can just come in here and say, I want to get started. So it's a basically five-step process. The first step is you have to choose how you want your data to show up on Microsoft Band. So here we let you have to do two things. One thing is, do you want your web tile to be a single-page web tile, or do you want it to be a multiple-page web tile? If you want it to be a multiple-page web tile, you will then be able to choose multiple layouts. If it is a single-page web tile, obviously you can only choose one layout. There's the feed support. If you choose feed support, then you can choose one layout and only one layout, and all the feed content will follow that one layout and show up on the Microsoft Band. So for this purposes, since I'm using multiple pages, I'm going to say I'm going to have a multiple-page web tile. And the first page I want, just to make things interesting, is I will have three lines with icons in them. So that's the web tile I'm going to create. Once I have decided my layout, I'm going to go in and I'm going to input the source URL for my data source. So for this purposes of this demo, I'm going to use a data source which is coming from Bing Maps APIs. So I don't know if you can see this. Let me just talk through it. It's a Bing API, RESTful API. What basically it does is it takes 2 data points, 2 map points, and it basically generates a route between point 1 to point 2, and it tells you details about the traffic in that route, and also tells you how long it's going to take you from getting from one point to the other point. The web tile, for the purpose of this demo, I'm actually giving it my Microsoft Office as the source and my home as the destination. So at any point during the day, I want to know how long it's going to take me to get from work to home, so that I don't have to worry about traffic at all different times of the day. Anytime I'm done with work, I just look at my web tile, and I will be able to get home. It will give me the time, how long it will take me to get home, and also the traffic along the way. And it will also tell me the route. So this is a public API. I just went in and created a quick developer account so that I could access this API. I'm just going to copy this data source. And go in here, paste that in there. And now what the web tile authoring tool will do is it will actually go and access that web tile and get all of that data, and it will show me a tree of the data that it fetched back, and it will ask me to say, out of that data, what data do you want to choose to show in your web tile? So I'm going to say some of these things I'm not interested in. It tells me a lot of details about, what path to take, what not to take, what way to go. So right at the bottom, though, let me actually, show you right here. So there are two resources. It says, this is called traffic congestion. I'm interested every time knowing how bad the traffic is. So I'm going to just say, OK, I'm interested in this field. I'm going to drag that and drop it in here. So now that is me telling as an author that I want to bind that part of the data source to this part of my web tile. So I've done that. Then I also want to say what the travel duration with traffic is going to be. And I'm going to say, OK, I'll just take that in there. And it's all in seconds right now, but you can actually have it different depending on how the API is used. And the last thing is I just want to know how much distance I have to travel if I take this route. So now I've put 3 data points that are very important to me from a very big data source which is already existing. And these are data points that I'm interested in. I can also go in, just for the heck of it, again, because I know this is seconds with traffic, I can put some simple literals in there. And I know this is miles, so I can put the miles in there. And because I want my web tile to look nice, because it is taking real estate on my wrist, I want to go in and add some icons just to make it look nice. So if I tap that, I can actually have any icons that I have already created. Here in this case, because this is traffic, I'm going to put the traffic icon there. This one is telling me how much time it's going to take. I'm going to put the time icon there. This will tell me what the route is or what the distance is from point A to point B. I'm just going to take that and put that in there. So now you can see in 2 minutes, I've actually created a tile that's going to show up looking with icons and dynamic text on my Microsoft Band. In addition to this, let's just say I want to add another page. And I want to know, so let me find one of the data sources in here, which is actually, so the description field right here, it basically tells me what route to take. So this is telling me, go on Highway 520 and then take the exit for Lake Washington Boulevard. This is important to me because if there are alternate data sources, I want to know which route to go. It's telling me it's medium traffic, but I also need to know which route to take to go home. Now, I don't want to put this on the same page. There's not enough space. So what I will do is I will go in and simply say, add another page. And for this page, I'll just say scrolling text, header and a body. I'll add that page. And now I come in here. This is the second page. I pick that in, and I drop it in here. And I can now say, via. So now my web tile now actually tells me on my first page what the traffic is. And on the second page, it just tells me what the route I have to take. So that's essentially all the data binding done. If I wanted to create more pages, I could just go in and keep adding more pages. If I wanted to add more data sources, I could actually just go in and add another data source. Maybe I wanted to compare Bing with Google or some other map provider just to kind of try out to see what it is. You can easily add multiple data sources and repeat the process and have more tiles, more pages on the Microsoft Band. Once I've done that, all I have to do is click Next. It basically asks me if I want to create a notification. This notification would pop up based on the data that comes down from the data source. So in this case, I want to know if the traffic time is too long. If it is taking too much time for me to go home, it's better to maybe keep working. So let's see. For that, I want to go in. So there we go. So travel duration during traffic. Let's just say I want to this is about, how much is that? It's about 14 minutes. I want to say, OK, if it is anything more than 10 minutes, just for the purpose of demo, I want to be notified and say, oh, it's too bad. Don't worry about leaving work because the traffic is too bad. So all I have to say is add a notification. It wants me to specify what the decision point or what the rule is that I want. So I'll drag that and say, OK, the traffic during duration, if it is greater than or equal to, doesn't matter. Let's just say 600. So it says if it is long, if the data tells me that it's going to take more than 10 minutes, maybe I want to be notified, and I'm going to say, hi, traffic, and just say, do more work, just to keep motivating to stay at work. So now the last step is you want to style your tile depending on your color theme preferences. This is where you can basically put a theme onto your tile. I'm just going to say I'm going to default to the band theme colors. All I have to then say is name this tile. I'm going to say traffic home. It's going to be traffic from work to home, created by my alias. I can actually use a default icon, or I can actually go in and just create an icon and I already have an icon here, and I can say, boom. Now I'm done. So 5 clicks of a mouse on a web page, and I'm already done. This creates a web tile. That was too easy. You don't have to applause. There's a lot of other stuff coming. Hold your applause. So right from this page, I can actually download my web tile. Once I download the web tile, I can then share it. I can then host it somewhere and send it to my friends, send it to my family if I want to. I can also choose to submit it, which is very easy. It'll just ask me to provide a description and an email contact, and it gets submitted. I've already sent this to myself. Let me show you how it all looks in action. I didn't want to take a chance, so here's my band, and here's my phone. I already emailed this thing to myself. When I tap on this thing, now like I promised you, it's going to be a one-click install. Tapping on that thing launches the Microsoft Health app for your users, and it already asks them, do you want to add this tile? And it says traffic home, traffic from work to home, gives me some information about the author, also tells you what the data source is. And all I have to do is just say yes. And if you look at the Microsoft Band now, it will actually now go in and fetch the Microsoft Health app is now fetching data to be able to install this web tile onto the Microsoft Band. As soon as it's done fetching that data, it will, or it should, install the web tile onto the Microsoft Band, depending on the network here. Let's see. Come on. Come on. Give it a few seconds. Even if it doesn't show up, I already have the tile on there just to showcase for the purpose of this demo. Oh, there you go. Finally got around to updating it. And as you will notice it, as it's updating, it's also fetching data to populate the web tile. So on the right-hand side, it still goes because it's now going and getting up-to-date data for the traffic that is happening right now. And soon it'll tell me when I go into the web tile how much traffic it is. And also, you see the data that it got was maybe over 600 seconds. So it says, high traffic, do more work. So I also got the notification. Anytime during the day when that condition is true, when the data is getting updated, I will get that notification. Just to show you that I was not bluffing, here's a tile. It says currently mild traffic with 793 seconds with traffic and 6.16 miles. And it shows me data saying take 520 west and go the exit for Lake Washington Boulevard. You could also have, in this case, I mean, both the tiles are the same. Just to showcase you the power that I talked about, you can have multiple data sources, not just one data sources. There's another web tile that I really like. This is called the currency converter. So on my wrist, I always want to have the US dollar currency conversion to some of the currencies that I'm always interested in, I'm trading. So here's the Australian dollar, here's the Canadian dollar, here's the Great Britain pound or euro. So this is a web tile that I create using 7 different data sources. Each one of these pages is being loaded from a different data source. And throughout the day, at any point, I can actually see how much is the 1 US dollar into Canadian and how much is 1 Canadian dollar into the US dollar. I personally, because I'm from Pakistan, I'm interested in the currency exchange rate for Pakistan. Right now, it's very good. So maybe I should go and buy something from Pakistan. So that was the demo for Microsoft Band web tiles. Coming back. So the other thing that we talked about was the Microsoft Band SDK. All of this data that you see here, we've actually talked about most of this in last year's build. So I'm not going to go into detail about what the SDK does, but just quickly talking about what the features of the Microsoft Band SDK are. Using the Microsoft Band SDK, you can get access to all the sensors that exist on Microsoft Band. So accelerometer, gyroscope, heart rate, GSR, you name it, all the sensors. There are 14 different subscriptions you can get from Microsoft Band. Also, you can send haptic alerts to Microsoft Band. There was somebody who was, oops, I keep going forward. Yep. So also, you can send haptic alerts. So Microsoft Band has an ability to vibrate the band for your users. So if you're sending a notification or you just want to alert the user for something, you can send a haptic alert. You can also create custom tiles. You can create multiple page layouts per tile. I talked about the Microsoft Band Visual Studio tile editor, which makes it very easy to create layouts and send tiles to Microsoft Band. You can add, remove, and update tiles. All of this we saw with web tiles, but we can also do that immersively with the Microsoft Band SDK. And with the SDK, one of the cool things that you can do is you can receive tile events. So with web tiles, you can take your data source and bring that content onto the Microsoft Band. But you can't take any data from the Microsoft band and send it to your data source. With the band SDK, you can actually send data to the Microsoft band and also create button events and other events that you can get back into your app. So tiled open, tiled close, and when the button is pressed, those events come back to your app running on the phone. And also, I talked about the background execution. It makes your tile always available. You don't have to, the user doesn't have to go and open the app on the phone. And even though the app is running on the phone, the experience feels very native to the band. So for this, I'm going to showcase. Oh, wrong arrow. Moving forward, I'm going to talk about an app called Wrist Remote. This is an app that is essentially a remote control on your wrist. It uses Xamarin and Azure to bring the power of Microsoft's of IFT onto the Microsoft band. Does everyone know what IFT is? So IFT stands for if this, then that. IFT is a service that is a collection that allows users, if you sign into IFT, to bind different services together. So you can say, if a certain action happens in one of my services, I want a certain trigger to happen in another service. So let's say if I'm following, I have an ESPN account. I say every time the Seattle Seahawks score a touchdown, I want to receive an email or a text message. So those are two different services. IFT allows you to create recipes to bind two different services together. They have about 300 different channels of services. You can, using the recipe creator, you can bind any one of those 300 to any other of those 300 services. So this is going to be an example where we use IFT. And we're going to showcase how using Microsoft Band, you can have the power of IFT on your wrist. So for this, let me first tell you what the architecture overview is of the app I'm going to be showing you. So for any SDK app, you need to have at least two components. You need to have the component, which is the Microsoft Band. You have to have a Microsoft Band. And then you need to have an application in the middle that runs on the phone. For this purpose of this demo, we also need to have a service because we're talking to IFT. So we are going to also have components into this in the cloud. So let's talk about the app on the phone. There's always Microsoft Health app running on the phone, which has its own background communication with the Microsoft Band. You will write a cross-platform application using Xamarin. That's your application that is communicating with IFT through your own Azure service. And that Azure service talks to the IFT service to manage the communication from the IFT service. So let's quickly see how the data flow works. So in the application, you will have to do initial setup. This is where you connect your users are going to go in and set up your application to talk to the IFT service. So the first thing to do is go to IFT.com, authenticate, and bind to the Microsoft Band channel on IFT. So that binding happens. That means now you can use the Microsoft Band with IFT. The second thing that happens is you go into the app, and you set up the app to connect to the background service. That's just the user credentials so that the apps and the service can talk to each other. And then the app will actually go in and discover and create some tiles with buttons. So the app will now put in an experience of the app onto the Microsoft Band. So then the app will say, OK, here's the experience. The user will decide, here's the experience I want from IFT onto my Microsoft Band. So that's the discovery and creation of tiles with buttons. Once that is done, you're done with the initial setup, with the last step of saying that your app now has to say, I've created some buttons and icons and a tile on the Microsoft Band. I want to subscribe to events coming from that tile. So after that, you're done with the initial setup. This is probably the last time the user will have to see the app because the user has gone in, signed in, created the tile. Now they only want to walk and talk from the Microsoft Band to their IFT service. So moving on, everything then happens in the background. All the shaded area, that is essentially things happening in the background. So when the user opens up the Microsoft Band and goes into your tile, they will want to trigger some action using the Microsoft Band. So for IFT triggers, they will maybe tap a button on their Microsoft Band tile. That button event will come to Microsoft Health background app, and the background agent will receive that button event. It will relay that button event to the background agent of your app, which will then send the trigger with the data to the IFT service, to the Azure service that is the front end for IFT. And then that trigger eventually goes into IFT. And now from that point onward, IFT will manage what it needs to do with the trigger based on the recipe. So if it was a button that says, if I press a button, or send an SMS to my wife, IFT will then go in and send an SMS to your spouse. So that's the way in which data goes from the band to IFT. On the other way around, just as a last step, your application might want to buzz or notify the user that your action was done. It's just a thumbs up saying everything is good. So the other way around would be actions. So if something happens on IFT, I want to be notified on my Microsoft Band as well. So IFT will then Once IFT gets a notification for a trigger happening from a different service, IFT will invoke an action on your Azure service, which will then send the action data to the application using the platform notification service, depending on which application you have. It's Android or iOS or Windows Phone. The platform notification service will send that data over to the background agent. That background agent will then take that and send a happening notification and the action notification onto the Microsoft band, and you will see the circle. So that's how the overall architecture works. Let's see the code highlights, and then we'll do a demo showcasing this app. All right. So I'm going to go and minimize this and go into Visual Studio now. So this is an app. It's a very basic app, and it has a bunch of components. Like in the architecture I talked about, this app has all the components that I showed in the architecture. It's written in a very portable way. So there is a core portable class library that we use to share data between the web content as well as the mobile content. So there are two services that we have, like I showed in the architectural diagram. There's a channel service that talks with my app, that talks from my web service to IFT. So this only manages the channel communication between my background service and the IFT service. There's a mobile service, which my mobile app will be communicating and getting the data back and forth from the mobile service. There's a core component in there, which basically is sharing data between the channel service and the mobile service. And last but not least, there's some cleanup table job. This is a job that runs just to kind of do some bookkeeping and make sure everything is clear in our Azure tables. So that's the part on the website of things. On the mobile side, we're using the Xamarin to create a cross-platform app. So by using Xamarin, we are able to have 80 to 90% of our app code shared. And that's all shared inside the portable app code. And then we have specific code for Android, iOS, and Windows Phone and Universal Windows app, which is just to do the platform-specific stuff, like communicating with the platform-specific background service for notifications, and also doing the platform-specific stuff for receiving background events from the Microsoft band. So quickly, just briefly to look into the Android, you can see there's a section called triggers. This is where the tile events receiver is working. So anytime a tile button is pressed, this is the code that gets invoked. When the event is received, it basically says it's a tile button event pressed. It creates an intent, and it fires off that intent to handle the service. And in that service, essentially all we do is, we take the data and we send it up to our service. Let me see where that is. So handle button press basically says what type of button it is. Depending on the different buttons that you have, it decides which button, from which tile and which page the button is coming from. And then it basically just goes ahead and sends the background information button to the cloud. So essentially it says send to the cloud, send the button trigger. IFT will now get notified of how the whole thing works. On the other side, here's the mobile extension services. This is basically just talking about how to register for mobile service extensions on the Android stuff. We will have similar things on Universal Windows Phone, Universal Windows app, as well as iOS. So some platform-specific stuff, but all of the code that you really need to see in the app is essentially in the app portable code. So this is an MVVM-based app. Very simple. We're using Xamarin Forms to create the app. All of the view model logic, everything that we need that you see in the app is all done in the mobile portable class library. So once you've done that, you don't need to worry about platform specifics. Just write it once, runs everywhere. All you have to do is just do the platform specific stuff in Android, iOS, and Windows Phone. So I don't want to go into the details of the app because it's not very fun to see. I want to show you a demo, though, of how this whole thing's come together. So on my band, I'm going to come out and show you. Let me see. Hold on. So here's my band. Just like scrolling over, you can see I have some web tiles in here. I talked about the currency tile. It's all in there. I also have a feed tile that gets me BBC News on my wrist. So this is still showcasing some of the web tiles. But here's the wrist remote. I create two tiles. One of the tiles is essentially basically setting up triggers and events and different things that I can do from my band with my service. So one of the things I can do is I can just test and send an email to myself. I'm just doing it in front because it takes a little while for the email to come back. But the cool thing that I want to see is I have 2 pages here. One is called the living room lights, and the other is called the dining room lights. So one of the things that I always struggle with is I have blackout blinds in my bedroom. So when I turn the curtains down, I can't see anything. When I wake up in the morning, when I'm trying to turn on the light in my side table, I always trip over, my phone falls down, or I'll I have a picture of my daughter. I usually trip it over as well. So I was like, how cool would it be if I'm sleeping with my Microsoft band, I wake up and I'm like, I'm awake from my Microsoft band to be able to turn on lights. So here's I put in 2 pages. Oh, while I was doing this, I actually got the email notification that that email was sent to me from Microsoft Band. But let's go back in here. And if in there I have two buttons, one is the dining room light, one is the living room lights. Just with the tap of a button, if I say turn on the lights for both of these. Now what has happened is I have sent messages which will be received by my app on the phone, and that app then goes in and sends it to my service. That service then talks to IFT. And then the IFT channel then goes and talks to my Philips channel, which Philips channel comes down and turns on both of those lights for me. So it takes a little bit of a delay, but you can see now I don't have to go in, wake up in the morning and trip my glass of water over. And just to showcase that it's not fake, I'm just going to go in and now try to turn those off one by one. And usually when you do it once, it's the second time around, it's a little faster, but it'll eventually turn off. And this is like when I'm going to sleep, I'll just tap the button and it goes off. So you can see both the lights were turned off. So now you can see how using Azure as your backend, using Xamarin as your front end on the apps, and using Microsoft Band and the SDK for the Microsoft Band, you can connect a whole bunch of technologies in a very simple fashion. You can connect this really complex structure just from your wrist to your home automation. This could be my garage door. This could be my fan. This could be my home audio system. It could be anything that IFT provides on the channels, that 300 channels that they have. And I can bring all of that power onto my Microsoft Band. So last but not the least, I need to make sure there has to be a call to action for everyone to do. So please go to developer.microsoftband.com. We have a ton of stuff for SDK, for the web tiles, for health APIs. Play with the sample code. We have great documentation, great sample code on there. Try out the web authoring tool. I showed you it takes 5 clicks, less than 5 minutes to bring your content onto the Microsoft Band. And then also use the SDK to build cool apps with Microsoft Band. Thank you so much for being patient. I know this is the last session. Everyone wants to get out and go back. But I appreciate the patience, all of you showing up. Thank you.